Public hearing. We're having a public hearing concerning the intent of the Board of Education of Warren Township High School District 121, Lake County, Illinois, to sell $3,950,000 in working cash fund bonds. All persons desiring to be heard will have an opportunity to present written or oral testimony. May I have a motion to move into the public hearing?
I'll move to enter into a public hearing concerning the intent of the Board of Education, Township High School District Number 121, Lake County, Illinois, to sell $3,950,000 working cash fund bonds.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Munda, second by Walls. Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
This public hearing is to receive comments concerning the intent of the Board of Education of Warren Township High School District 121, Lake County, Illinois, to sell $3,950,000 of working cash fund bonds. Anyone who wishes to be heard will have the opportunity to present written or oral testimony. So first we'll have the presentation by the administration.
The purpose for us, for the Board of Education to issue the working cash bonds is to pay off our unfunded actuarial liability with IMRF. Currently, we owe IMRF about $4.7 million. That cost us, in our rate to IMRF, about 4.71%. In addition, we lose the investment income of about 7.5%. So the cost of not paying your IMRF liability is over 12%. That is well over $600,000 in either expense or lost revenue to the district. And we can issue working cash bonds at probably about a 3% rate, which means we are saving the district and ultimately the taxpayers over 9% by issuing these bonds and paying down a separate liability, which is our IMRF liability. So that is the intent. That's what the board has instructed my office to do. And this is the process to give people the opportunity to publicly comment to the board. And that is the purpose of the Bond Information Notification Act, otherwise known as the bond hearing.
And Carol, can you give me the just rough dollar amount of the savings?
It's $600,000 a year for perpetuity. So as long as this district's in existence, that's really what we save annually, $600,000 to $700,000
Per year.
per year forever.
Thank you.
All right. So have we received any written testimony regarding this bond?
No, we have not.
All right. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to the board regarding this orally? There's not. Would any of the board members like to have any further comment on this issue?
I have none.
Carol, do you just want to explain for the public where the difference is between the 4.7 and the 3.9?
We had a what's called a tax increment financing district at Lakehurst. Waukegan closed that out early after 14 years rather than 23 years. There were proceeds that had been raised that were distributed to the taxing bodies. So Warren received about $800,000 in TIF funds. We have budgeted another $200,000. So we will be making a payment using the tax increment financing money of $800,000 plus $200,000 or $1 million to supplement the borrowing. And that will pay off our liability as it was last calculated for us.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, all persons desiring to be heard have been given the opportunity to present written or oral testimony concerning the intent of the Board of Education of Warren Township High School District 121, Lake County, Illinois, to sell $3,950,000 in working cash funds and bonds. The intent to sell working cash funds and bonds has been placed on tonight's agenda as an action item.
No, it does not, it's not an action item. It's
Okay,
already-
who's
The
that?
board has already taken action, I'm sorry.
Okay. I retract that last statement. We've already done this. Very good. Then I need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move to close the public hearing concerning the intent of the Board of Education Township High School District number 121, Lake County, Illinois, to sell $3,950,000 working cash fund bonds.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Munda, second by Drake. Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Conway.
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi.
Yes.
Mr. Walls.
Yes.
Mr. Drake.
Yes.
Mr. Munda.
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
I have 7 yes.
Will.
Motion carries.
We'll now start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. We do have a change to the hiring recommendations. So it'll be to approve Exhibit A, personal recommendations 125 through 139, and then 137, 38 for now, and do that into the motion as well. I'll be happy to do that. So we'll change that item.
John, I would also like to remove the payment to Hodges and Louise totaling $37,443.18, which is check number 329043, to be voted on separately from the rest of the budget. That would leave $4,565,296.89 to be approved in the.
Thank you, Liz.
You're welcome.
Okay. Are there any other changes? Then I move we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Anderson, second by Conway. Mr. Munda.
Yes.
Mr. Walls.
Yes.
Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi.
Yes.
Mr. Drake.
Yes.
Mrs. Conway.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
I have 7 yes. Motion carries.
Okay. The next item is recognitions, and we did have some student council folks who were going to come, but since it's finals week, I think we've decided to put that off until January. So we won't be having any recognitions. The next item on the agenda is reception of visitors. So is there anybody here that would like to address the board for their 3 minutes? Okay. Moving right along, the next item is the president's report. I don't have anything to report. I didn't know if anybody had anything they wanted to say about the conference. A few of our board members went to. If it's not necessary, I just thought if there was anything anybody wanted to say specifically, you can, or you can wait till next time if you want to get your thoughts together. But I wasn't there, so.
I'll talk about it in January. You want to put it on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll put it on under the
I
president's report.
wasn't here tonight.
Okay, we'll put it on there then. Great. Good idea. All right, then moving on to committee reports. We got a finance committee meeting?
On November 17th, the Finance and Facilities Committee met to present to the Board of Education a long-term facility plan through the year 2021. This is a project that many of the administrators, including the principals, associate principals, athletic director, director of technology, we all worked together and met several times to really put together, I think, a well-thought-out plan. We presented the Board of Education with that document, and so that will be used as part of the budgeting process and strategic plan process, and we will keep the board up to date on that. Also, we discussed request for qualification for architects.
Okay.
John, I can tell you that at the conference, when I was at the exhibit hall,
Wait a minute.
every architect that I stopped to visit had already talked to Carol. They all said, oh, Carol Rogers had already been here. So,
I was with
Carol did
Carol
her
on
job.
most of those visits.
Thank you.
Thank Carol, she's very efficient. All right, well, I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun. And then we have the policy committee.
We did thank you on November 30th. A number of people in this room are part of our policy committee, and so we prepared some recommendations for the Board of Education for a first reading this evening. In those policy recommendations, some of them are the edits recommended by press, which comes out of the School Board Association. Others were edits that we decided not to accept and to keep our current policies as is. So I will read through the list of policies that were edited, so the board will not have to later. Those are 2:100, 2:150, 2:200, 4:170, 5:90, 5:100, 6:15, 6:50, 6:60, 6:160, 6:270, 6:280, 6:310, 6:315, 6:320, 6:340, 7:50, 7:100, 7:130, 7:140, 7:290, 7:300, 7:305, 7:340, and 8:30 were the policies for first reading this month, and the board will see them again in January for approval.
Okay. Yeah, then I guess it's on to the superintendent report.
Thank you. A couple of little topics, just as a reminder, everybody. So we're fortunate that we were supposed to have some students here for recognition, but a number of staff members prompted me that it probably might be better to push those off, because hopefully they're home studying, because exams are Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week. And the district office will be open on December 21st, 22nd, 28th, 29th, and 30th, as well as each of the school main offices will have some availability there. So those are the 5 days during the winter recess that the district and school offices will be open. We did have one FOIA come in since the last meeting, and that was from Peg Marara. I also provided to the board your monthly attendance, enrollment, discipline, and staffing reports, and that's just to monitor our progress in those areas from month to month. And we also have a treasurer's report from Carol.
The district received some very good news last week. The first bit of news was we had our bond rating reaffirmed from Standard & Poor's as a AA+ stable rating. Very good news that we didn't lose any ground there. I want to just quote one of their comments in their report. They stated, quote, "We consider the district's financial management practices strong under our financial management assessment methodology, FMA, which is financial management assessment. An FMA of strong indicates our view that practices are strong, well embedded, and likely sustainable. And I just want to state that this really is a reflection of the culture that the Board of Education has embedded along with the administration. We
And
also,
Carol.
well, thank you. We also sold our Series 2015 bonds. These were to refund our Series 2008 C bonds. We had originally estimated that we would save about $425 to the taxpayers. So this is a savings not to the district, but to our taxpayers, which was about an 8% net present value. Our actual savings to the taxpayers was $632,000, net present value, or 12%. So these were just excellent results. Thank you very much. The other thing I wanted to point out, PMA, who actually handled this sale for us, actually had 5 of their advisors standing around the screens because we had 7 bidders submit 55 bids, which is a lot. And so it was very, very unusual, but it's an indication that people were very interested in purchasing Warren Township High School bonds. So very, very good news. The October Treasurer's Report, revenue is trending higher than last year and expenditures are trending lower. So let's hope that continues. It does seem to continue in November. I've taken a sneak peek there. And so hopefully we stay on a positive trend and continue with our next bond sale and have some good numbers there. So that is the Treasurer's Report for October.
Can I ask a question, please?
Of course.
Carol, thank you for everything you've done. Do you have any updated information regarding anything solar?
I do, and that is one of the strategic plan initiatives is increased intergovernmental agreements and participation with other government agencies. I spoke to Waukegan School District 60. Waukegan is also interested in putting in a solar farm. They have done a lot of legwork legally. We are going to be working with Waukegan School District to get additional information, and I have forwarded some of that information to Mr. Walls and Mr. London. I can forward that to the rest of the board. But they are putting together a request for proposal. They have been working on this for years, so we get the advantage of their knowledge. So Waukegan's new to the conference and now new to working with us on a proposed solar field. So that was a big jump because the individual from Waukegan actually got to meet with the president of ComEd last week and their CFO, and that was a meeting that is very, very difficult to get. So, we've moved forward a notch.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Carol. All done? Okay. All right, and then we'll move along to new business. And by the way, Carol, that the loan and the savings we got is in no small part due to the culture that you have that helped us in that area. And I think that the fact that many people were bidding on our bonds means that they have a good feeling about the fact that we're going to pay it. So I think that's you've done a fantastic job of guiding us.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, the next item, first item under new business is the foreign travel discussion, which obviously with all of the goings on in the world, I suppose is very timely at this time.
And Cheryl Parmenter is here and back. She actually, the trip that's coming up was actually approved, just as I was looking at the date for the board, back in November of 2014 is when this trip that's coming up was brought to the board for AG World History trip to London and Paris. And the board has seen, by the way, a copy, a response from the educational tour company that had some general information, but the board, obviously, this has been a discussion in other districts regarding overseas travel, and so we just want to make sure Cheryl can come and answer any questions the board might have.
Thanks for having me. Is that your answer to any of your questions?
And so Cheryl, can you start a little bit, one of the things that came up was, and you're familiar with what happens if parents, the trip itself, one of the comments that I wanted to make out of at least the trip that educational tours put out, their information, right? From their end, they put out the information to make sure that parents had more time to consider their plans without fear of losing additional money. The many options offered through their policies reflect they're trying to give flexibility to parents. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that doesn't necessarily affect us because we're not leaving until March. The flexibility is meant for any trips that are going either before the new year or like right around January, February. We do have some options as far as the tour goes. Obviously, one would be a cancellation entirely. Some of the other ones that the company and I think I would suggest looking into, if anything, is we can amend our itinerary. We can postpone our travel, and then we can also attempt to change our destination. They all have various impacts on the students and then obviously the parents who are almost 90% are paid in full. So if we cancel the trip, there would be an issuance of a travel voucher. And it's good for 1 year. It's for the amount that was paid for the trip. The students then have to make arrangements on their own to hop on another trip. It wouldn't be sponsored through the school. The travel voucher is kind of problematic because we do have two students who are seniors, and so they are more affected by this as far as being with the school or anything along those lines. They also risk losing $95 at a minimum and $250 at a maximum, even with the travel voucher, just because of the fees and everything else. If we amended our itinerary, those parents are still responsible for any change in price there too. So that's something that we're kind of worried about there. If we postpone our travel, that brings up the issues of our seniors who would be graduates and then would technically be allowed on the trip. It's our past practice of not allowing for recent graduates to come with us. And then also there's just the potential for conflicts with families who've made plans or students who are doing academics or sports. If we were to change our destination, our options are also kind of difficult. For the price point that they've paid, we'd really be picking anywhere around France. So we're not really necessarily avoiding any kind of conflict or risk entirely there. Or we'd be heading towards Central America. And that is obviously not a trip that the student signed up for. So we're kind of stuck a little bit as far as our decisions go. Parents do have the option to cancel on their own. As far as my communication with them, I told them just to kind of say, Pat, we're going to talk to the board, we're going to see what you guys have to say, and then once I announce it for them, they can make whatever decision on their own. Some have, the majority of them actually have paid for their trip insurance, so they do have cancellation flexibility there on their own. The difficult thing is they can't cancel for terrorism or any kind of act of God kind of thing. So they would have to either have an existing medical condition, or they'd have to be on their way to the airport to go on the trip and then be in a car accident or have jury duty. Lots of restrictions there. So that's kind of where we're at as far as our options and how that would likely impact the students.
Have you talked to any of the parents? Have any of the parents said anything to you to indicate that they might withdraw or that they don't think this is a good idea?
Right. We have actually, I'm just give you a number, 45 students that are enrolled on this trip, so quite a few. In the first couple of days when the events in Paris were happening, I was reaching out to parents just to let them know this is the statement by EF, this is kind of what we're handling, on our end. And I had 3 parents who were responsive to any of my messages, just saying thank you, keep us updated. I have had since then only one parent say that they were considering canceling the trip for their daughter. And so I just informed them that we were having this meeting and that I would update them so that they can better make a decision about what they'd like to do.
So really, you've only heard from a total of 4 parents, or 3?
As far as concerns for canceling, only one parent.
No, I mean overall.
But overall, just as far as like thank you
4
and having
parents.
communication and people reaching out, yeah, 4
Out
parents.
of 45.
Yeah.
That's not a very good percentage. I wonder if we can have a meeting. Is it possible to have a meeting with these parents to find out?
Well, there would be a meeting before you left, I'm sure.
Yeah, we actually-
No, I mean,
So, I think there's several things involved here too. I mean, that's a good idea that you gotta make sure everybody's still going, which you would think if they were thinking about canceling, they would be coming forward saying, I want my money back.
Yeah.
But I mean, is there a point at which we would say as a board saying we can't let students go? I mean, I'm not saying that's going on today,
no.
but I'm saying what happens if something else happens?
Right.
In Europe, say in February, and you're getting ready to leave, then do we have a responsibility then to say, no? And then let the money, I mean, you can't, it is a school trip, so technically we can say, no, that we don't want to authorize this trip anymore.
Right, and if
And
the
there's a
events,
But I think that needs to be explained to people, maybe we need to do a better job explaining that on the way in too. I mean, we don't really think about that, I don't think, or I didn't anyway.
yeah,
If the board cancels, does not give its approval or cancels the trip, is the board then responsible, is the district responsible for the funds that have been put out by the parents? Who's responsible for reimbursing?
Nobody.
But we approved the trip, so,
I understand that, but I don't think that makes us responsible for the cancellation fees. I mean, we've never done it, so
I know.
I can't imagine what would happen, but I think that brings up a second thought I had earlier, is we should now make insurance mandatory.
Mhm.
Put it in the fee, instead you just pay it, no matter what, for all of our trips going
I
forward.
believe in our Australia and New Zealand, that's something that we did do.
Yeah.
We made sure, because there was a couple of replacements where I feel like that had slipped through the cracks as far as
Yeah.
making sure that it was required,
But it doesn't sound like insurance would cover a situation
like this, right?
where someone wants to
Right.
cancel because it's become dangerous.
Correct.
So we would need to put pressure on an organization like this to change what's
Their
included in their insurance policy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Would it be
Going
this
forward, right.
organization, or would it be an insurance company?
It is an
we need to
insurance
put-
company, actually.
That's what I
It is,
thought.
yeah,
Right.
right.
Okay.
Whichever one is
Right.
controlling it.
Mhm.
And then all that, I'm sure they'd be happy to write you a policy for that.
For a
It's just a matter
price.
of, yeah, well, they have to be concerned about that, and they have to, do- yeah.
There has to be
They
a
will.
burden, there has to be a burden of
Right.
proof, whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
you have an event the week before where you're going, that would be a pretty strong burden.
That would be good.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right now, that wouldn't even be covered.
Right, yeah. You just have to, stomp on your foot.
They don't have to have accidents on the way to the
Yeah.
airport.
Oh, look at that. Isn't that amazing?
But at this point, it's just a travel alert, not a warning.
Correct.
And when you read it, how many times those alerts are out there.
Exactly,
Oh,
yes.
all the time.
Then
Yeah.
Every Sunday, they have the alerts in the paper.
Yeah.
And I think the administrative letter talked about how there were tours in Paris and how they responded to it. I reached out to our consultant and asked for actual protocol as far as their safety protocol. If something's happening, who's the first one to make a call or respond, and then who's the next one on the chain of command from there on out. And I have a document here that I can give you guys, just as a front and back page outlining the options and the impact, and then also highlights that protocol. The company itself, I think, is very present. They have locations set up, or offices set up in specifically in France. There's many of them, and then also in Paris. So that kind of gives us an advantage there as far as the safety and being able to respond very easily to issues like this.
Well, I certainly think we should let the trip go on at this point. I don't see any reason
The board,
personally to.
the board had good comments last month when it came up initially about the fact that unfortunately the world's a more unpredictable place, right? And so that's a reality unfortunately that we're dealing with now that maybe we weren't a few decades ago. But it did, the other question that came up had to do with about registering the students And the embassies do, is that done?
Yeah, either the consultant does that or I take care of it, but that's been done for our previous trips as well.
And so, going back to asking the parents, can you like telephone the parents or
Well,
some
I've been
way?
in email contact with them. My plan was to
I know,
wait.
but you only had 4 responses.
My plan was to wait to hear from you guys and see what
Uh-huh.
your questions were and to see if we were gonna potentially have a trip before I responded to the parents. I didn't wanna speak too soon or make any promises that I can deliver on. My plan is to go on tonight, craft an email, send that out to the parents, be in contact with them about whatever decision is made, and then basically, to outline their options for them. And especially if that's how you wanna proceed as far as like leaving it in the parents' hands to make that decision. That would probably be, I mean, that is my plan.
I think, you know,
Well,
that's, my opinion, that's a parental choice. If they're
but I'd
I
like,
agree with
looking,
Mike.
looking to put their child on a plane for an academic endeavor, hopefully they're engaged in what's going on. They're not gonna place their child in harm's way. And that's gotta, I just think that is a parental choice that we really shouldn't get into. With my position, I've had an opportunity this week to speak with a number of administrators across Lake County, and the question really came back up, Lake Zurich being one, they've got a band trip coming, and several other districts have got some other trips planned, just like we do. But the big question that came back as, a group of administrators was, where does our responsibility, or our legal responsibility lie when we approve this trip, and something unfortunate takes place? What comes back to us, or what could come back to us if this is a board-approved trip, sponsored and approved by us? And that was kind of where all the conversation came back to, is parents are gonna make those choices, but what legally will come back to us is where we kind of left that hanging. I guess that's really a legal question. That if we sponsor and we approve, where does that leave us as a district and as a board?
Cheryl, I'm just like you, I understand emails and all that, and I'm not one that readily responds to emails. But I would like a personal contact with each parent, just to be sure, rather than just ending out emails. Is that possible?
One of the things that I can easily do in my email is require them to respond to me to confirm that they have read the email, and then I can easily call anybody who I don't hear back from.
Okay.
I could also make 47 phone calls for you,
Yeah.
but I couldn't guarantee that it would all, I'd have that personal contact prior to, semester.
Yeah,
Just wanted to have some
that's
time.
pretty impossible because
The holidays.
it's the end of this week and then the holidays are coming,
Yeah.
so, no, but possibly could you do it by our second meeting in January?
And give you an update.
Mhm.
I think we're gonna let the trip go forward at this point.
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
think
I
there's no-
can definitely
there's no question.
update you.
Right, right, that
That's
would be
not a
great.
problem.
Okay,
But yeah, we kind of have to make a decision
We're going.
before the new year.
yeah, no, I agree that we've already agreed to it, and it's a parent's decision. I just would like to know where the parents stand and how many we're gonna lose, and, is it possible we could fill some of those places?
Absolutely.
So that's where I'm coming from.
Okay?
Just as a, thanks Cheryl, just as a reminder, I wanted to update the board. We had a choir trip that was supposed to go to Texas, and that was just to update the board on the 5 trips, if you will, that were kind of on the docket. Because Cheryl's here obviously because the Paris situation happened, but there's other trips. The choir trip didn't go due to numbers, just to let the board know that. We've also got a Spain trip that's on the docket for March 19th through 26th. And then there's another Aries and Paris trip on June 1st through 16th of this year. And then the one that Cheryl mentioned to Australia and New Zealand is the following summer. So just to remind the board of those other trips that we've heard in the last year and a half or so, ones that are still in the pipeline.
Thanks, John, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay. We'll move along then to the Illinois School Report Card.
As an informational piece, I did provide the board annually, we need to provide the board with the school report cards. They are updated on the Illinois State Board of Education website, both for the district and for the school itself, which is generally the same information. But you can pull down both if you would like. Also, just as a highlight to that, we did have in the new report card, there's information on the perk testing, which was reported for the first time this year. People were calling, asking us, what our impression of it was. Well, there's things we were happy about with it. The administration last year, in terms of being for a course-based test rather than a whole grade level of test, was something new to districts. And so I think our administration must have learned quite a bit from that and did a great job getting almost 95% of our kids with what was the goal, just short of that for both sessions of the test. And our scores were fine. Again, we don't know really wholeheartedly what they mean because they're kind of benchmark scores for everybody the first year out. But we did see that we were where we normally kind of would fit above the state average, and obviously our kids did the best they could. And so we'll pull out of that as much as we can, and we're still focused on our ACT scores because we know they're a direct benefit for our kids. And related to that, on a side note, back on December 10th, the president did sign the Every Student Succeed Act, right, which is the follow-up to No Child Left Behind out of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So there will be some follow-up to that over the next couple of months and years for sure, in terms of testing and in terms of teacher evaluation and things that Illinois has been putting in place that has been part of No Child Left Behind. It'll be interesting to see how the state of Illinois responds independently of Washington in some of those areas. So that's certainly something to be worth looking at over the next 6 months or so. But I did provide for the board a copy of the report card.
John, could I ask, is this report card, isn't it supposed to be on our district website?
Yeah, well, in fact, it just came up live on the 11th. In fact, on the 11th, we went and looked for it, and it wasn't up yet. I had put in what was the preliminary copy of it to the board members. I looked just before the meeting, and it was up. We'll make sure that we get the.
It's on our website.
Released, we'll make sure that the link is live to them.
Okay, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Excuse me.
Okay, moving on to the discussion of request for a qualification RFQ for district architects.
The board had mentioned at our facility and finance committee meeting about putting out a request for qualification for architectural services. I've given you a draft model of that with possible dates for receiving the RFQ, issuing the RFQ request for qualification, and dates for interviews possibly, ranking the top 3 firms, negotiating with the firms. If the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer that. Otherwise, I would look for direction from the board on whether they would want us to go out on January 6th and start the request for qualification process for architectural firms.
Works for me.
I think that's great, Carol.
Okay, so it'll be published in the newspaper on the 6th, distributed out to firms, and if we have to modify dates a little bit, we may do that before issuance, but I think we're in pretty good shape for what you see in front of you.
Okay, looks good.
Carol, can I just ask that you find out one other thing when you do the
Sure.
request?
Sure.
When I was at the exhibit hall, a number of the architects said that it's really important to know whether the engineering firm is in-house or whether they're working with someone separate.
Mm-hmm.
Because in this situation like we had with the
FGN.
It's who was really at fault? Was it the architect, and was it an engineer inside that firm? Or was it a separate engineering partner that worked with them and then they were really the one at fault for that issue? So They suggested that we know whether that engineer that's working with the architect is in-house or whether they're working with an outside business partner.
And actually, that is in the specifications.
Where is it?
Let's
Cover letter,
see.
yes.
We'll just make sure it's in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We already defined it. Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
Thank you very much for that comment.
It's a good distinction.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we'll start the process and we'll see where it goes. Okay, the next item is the strategic plan. So this is where we would vote on the actual strategic plan, so.
I would like to highlight just a few things, Mr. Anderson, if I can.
Yes, sir.
Especially the immediate pieces, because I did want to talk through, we did, I'm going to pass out to the board members. We will have a document posted on the website, which is our current strategic plan. And so there's a couple different formats in which that strategic plan sits. And I just wanted, in terms of direction, do I have enough there?
Do we have two? Oh, we
Just
have
got one. It's just one page document, right?
one page. Yeah.
On the big page.
So the document, thanks, Rico. The document the board has, we'll get to in a minute, and basically what that is kind of working, a little bit working backwards, if you will, the end in mind, like the sheet that the board has tonight is the results that we want for the district, right? And any strategic plan is meant to bring about some results for our students. And so we'll get to this sheet in a minute or so, but I did want to at least just talk through the process. First off, thanks to all of our administrators, specifically community members that participated in our strategic planning process. It was very comprehensive. I thought we covered a lot of information, and it's going to allow us to move forward over the next 5 years or so. One thing that we tried to do is put together a couple of formats, so I'm going to read through while that thing's booting just so everybody can see. Will it advance now? There it goes. So what we did is this. We kind of took aside the format and the information that Dr. Porto had gave us when we came through, and we wanted to make sure that, number one, we created a document that looks like ours, and so this is kind of what our strategic plan, at least for now, looks like. So if you notice, it goes 2015 to 2020. So we've got a 5-year plan there, but as we talked about, this is a plan that is modified every year, edited every year, and could turn into a rolling document to where in another year or two, we just extend the plan out and modify and keep our 5-year strategic plan going. The first 2 pages are very cumbersome. The reason I bring this up is these are all 5 of those, or 6 themes, rather, that were brought through with us through the whole process and with all 5 years. And so I wanted to show this to you first, even though for board members, that's not necessarily the version that you guys had in your board packets. You had more of a booklet type form. So what we did is inside the strategic plan, for those of you that go to it later, you'll see that there's a cover letter, just an introductory letter talking about the process itself, and then we get into a little bit of some of the text in the document. And so I just want to make sure that we have our belief statements, the 100 years of excellence we're using as a tagline for the next 18 months. It's a unique opportunity for us to really highlight the century of excellence that we've done at Warren Township High School. So at least for the next 18 months, we talked about a tagline, that we have some great ideas. They're just on hold because any chance we get, we're going to remind people that next year is a really important and special and fun school year for our whole community. But we went through our mission and our beliefs and our formula for success. These are all important parts of the plan, and we tweaked them a little bit as we went through. And then what we did is we got into a little bit of the year by year. So I'm going to come back to this slide in a second. But in the document itself, we go 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19, and 19, 20. So there's year by year in the document itself, which is much more reader friendly. And for each of the 6 themes that are there, curriculum instruction, student advocacy, shared leadership, student life, community and communication, and securing the future. So each one of those themes has some work plans with it in terms of going forward. But then what we wanted to do was, afterwards, when we wanted to talk about results, Dr. Porto kind of left us with those greatest components of superior performance, distinctive impact, and lasting endurance. And we had talked about these kind of subgroups of academic achievement, external recognition, and high levels of satisfaction. These were all things that came out at the end of the strategic planning. We had the community partnerships and connections that Carol referenced, shared leadership, leaders in the field, success beyond high school, and fiscal responsibility and securing the future. Those were kind of, okay, those are good things to talk about, but what does that mean in terms of our school, right? What are the tangible results that we are looking for? And so ultimately what we wanted to do is, rather than just refer to those things, we wanted to turn everything into an either maintain, increasing, or completing the task, right? And so for example, that is our graduation rate. We're very happy with it, right? And we realize where it is, and to say that we need to increase that might be unrealistic. So that's an example of something that we said we're going to maintain our high graduation rate. We want to increase our ACT composite. We think there's room to grow there. We've got some strategies in place. So that's an example of something we want to increase. We want to maintain our high AP participation, AP success rate, increase our math reading scores for some of our at-risk readers. We've got our para implementation, that's a completion item that we need to get done, right? So there's things on here that obviously on our end, we want to hold ourselves accountable to some things even beyond what we talked about in strategic planning. We every year will review with the board what ISBE is expecting of us in terms of assessment and accountability. We had talked about Park where it is right now. Park might be gone in 2 years, Park might be everything in 2 years. But every year we need to review with the board what we're paying attention to. We're paying attention to Park. We're still focused on ACT right now, right? But every year we need to review that. We need to increase our summer school offerings and enrollments. And then moving on to recognition, increased recognition for our community. We need to continue to maintain high levels of success in our athletic program. These items here have to do with student satisfaction. We want to increase that educational technology readiness, maintain our high attendance rate, maintain our low suspension rates, maintain our high participation in athletics, maintain our high participation in extracurricular activities. Those are all things, when they're up, when these things are going on, our kids are happy and they're coming to school and doing well. Community partnerships, we have some work to do there. First one has to do with the 100 years. We've got an opportunity to start working right away on the 100-year celebration. We want to make sure that we do a website review. We want to make sure we do a communication tool review. We want to make sure that we do a review of whether or not we need a PR or communications position in the district. These were things that came out from the strategic plan. And we want to make sure that we increase our community partnerships and intergovernmental agreements. There may be opportunities to do some of these things within those intergovernmental agreements. Shared leadership. We talked a lot about the fact that we're changing our lead teacher model to make sure they have some release time to work with their teachers. We hope at the end of the day our teachers are more satisfied with that model than it showed through the survey prior, a few months back in the fall. We also want to make sure that we increase our student leadership participation, and I'll talk to the board about how we might measure that in a second. Leaders in the field, we want to make sure that we're constantly letting people know all the great things about Warren, and so they want to come and watch the good things that we do. Success beyond high school, these are pretty easy for us in regards to our alumni. We want to maintain the high attendance we have at post-secondary institutions. We want to maintain the retention at those institutions, and we want to make sure that we continue to give certifications to a lot of our students that help them get employment right away. Finally, under the fiscal responsibility aspect, we want to increase our technology connectivity, and we've already worked on that a little bit. Increase the food service satisfaction rating. We talked a lot about that with our kids and adults at the strategic planning. Maintain our balanced budget. We want to complete an alternative energy options review. We'll come back to the date of that. That's been talked about already tonight. Maintain our long-range project list that we've already talked about. Update our certified and administrative staffing patterns in connection with our decreasing enrollment. Very important that we have that report done, and finally, we want to maintain the funds in our operating reserves between 35 and 45%. The reason this list is important for us, right, is they're tangible items that we know what that means in terms of our progress. So what I've given the board is a draft, a very draft document, and I've worked with the administrative team that's tried to say, well, how much do we expect to increase, and by when, and how will we know it, or what's the data source that we would know that we're having that success. And so the first one on the list, just for everyone's, because we're still filling in some of these holes and tweaking these and reviewing a few numbers, but when we talked about our high graduation rate, we know that we get that information off of our school report card. We said that we want to just maintain that high graduation rate. It'd be great if it goes up, but it's very good right now. Our current performance is at 94% of our students graduate. And so we said, well, it shouldn't, we think we would need improvement if that slips below 92. We think it's solid performance between 92 and 96. Can we get to an exemplary result? Yeah, if we get above 96, we're going to think that's excellent. We're really solid right now at 94. If we can get it above 96, that's going to be awesome. Right, so we've left ourselves some room to grow, but by the same token, that's a category that we'd be looking to maintain kind of very solid results where we're at. There's some other items on the list that are a little more comprehensive in nature. The ACT composite score isn't just about an ACT composite score. The ACT composite score embeds in it all the work that we need to do in terms of our achievement gap within the school. There was a lot of goal work that's in the strategic plan that talked about the achievement gap and making sure that all of our students have opportunities open to them when they leave Warren. So part of us raising our ACT score is looking at some students who right now, we think that if we worked on them a little bit, they would be pushed up and bring everybody up higher. So part of that is looking at our achievement gap within the school. So I wanted the board to get an early look at what this document is. What I'd like you to do is continue over time to go through this and make sure that this makes sense to you. And if there's anything else collectively that the board wants to see us work on and make progress on, please make sure that we capture it on our document so that we can use this as a leadership team to help drive our work going forward. So this is kind of our greatness indicator with metrics document, and it'll help us, if you will, put some accountability in the system. Some things aren't quite as, some things obviously aren't quite as number driven, and so the piece about, when we were talking about solar, the alternative energy or the solar field, what we decided at least to hold ourselves to was Carol said that by August, she would be prepared enough to give a report to the board on August of 2016 on this issue. So some things are just spreading out to say, well, wait a second, over the course of the next 5 years, by that point in time, at least tentatively, that's what Carol has said. I'll give you a report at that point in time. It'll help us drive some things going forward after that. So that's, we did want to give you a little bit of background on what the document is in front of you. And I wanted to also make sure, if I could, that I talk through some of the immediate action items. Because some of the things that are back early on in the document, these are things that we are currently working on, right? Or upon approval by the board, we're moving forth with it because they're for next year, right? The things on this page were for things for next year. So in all of them, the strategic planning process is part of that theme. We all spend a lot of quality time together going through the strategic planning process, right? And so that was good work that we did. We also want to make sure that we, those new courses that came out of our curriculum process, dance, computer science, and our STEM physics class, those are immediate for next year. Right? And some of these things you'll see in other places like our curriculum process. We want to make sure that we increase summer school programming, and that's another approval item on the board's agenda for tonight is this summer school program. And we want to make sure that we design a new senior exam exemption policy to hold our seniors to a rigorous senior year that Mr. Keeley's been working hard at, that we're coming up on the deadline, which is really in our handbook for next year, and we can start communicating to our juniors, sophomores, and freshmen what the parameters are. Under student advocacy, we've already had to do some work on our ELL staffing to make sure that we're compliant with the ELL enrollments that we have in our buildings. And we also did an alignment study with our special ed department, specifically our co-teaching model and how that aligns with the rest of our programming to make sure that we have all of our students in the right courses to help them get higher ACT scores. Shared leadership, we want to make sure that we revise our lead teacher model, which we will be doing, and in fact, some of these things we're looking to post. This is an example, and upon approval tonight in January, we will post these lead teacher positions again with the release period to make sure we give anybody who's interested an opportunity to apply, but that we would need to do this right away in January. Under student life, we have a couple of important things. We talked about student assistance programming. We at least want to get a club at each campus where students are advocating for healthy decision-making amongst all of our freshmen through senior students. So it's very important in terms of making sure students are aware of the decisions that they face every day, right? Because it's a little bit tricky out there when you're driving and there's all kinds of other things in your life. We have 4 new sports that we're excited about, starting next year with our new North Suburban 8 conference, and so obviously we need to get coaches hired, at least head coaches, for both boys and girls water polo and boys bowling and girls badminton. We would need to do that in January, so we'll start that process. And we need to work on our digital citizenship next step. The 100-year Sullivan communication. We've already had a few meetings. We're underway in trying to get our alumni reconnected. We've already put out on social media, we're going to try to keep blasting it out there. We want people to know that 16-17 is a critically important year for us to celebrate together. So we've got thousands and thousands of alumni who are all within a reach or sometimes across the world, but we need to find out who they are so we can help share all the great things that's still going on at Warren and reconnect them. And in the last one, the food service bid process. We talked a lot about that, and Carol's been taking the lead on making sure we're prepared to do that because of the bad results in that survey that we had. We want to make sure that we have the pool improvements done as part of the building project this spring. So we've already done all the preliminary work on that process. We want to make sure that we have, the report to the board. I think I said that I would give it in March to the board on the alignment between our enrollment and our certified staff and expected retirements and administrative staff. That report will come from me. It'll be by March because we will need that in terms of staffing for next year, but there's a nice alignment between our enrollment decline and anticipated retirements. And then the last piece was just the update, the long-term project schedule, which we've been doing. These are 15-16 work projects, which lead us into this 16-17 school year. So upon approval tonight, if the board does approve, that's pretty much given our administrative staff the okay to go ahead and do these things that we said we were going to do. So I just wanted to share the end result with the board, a tentative draft of what the end result looks like in terms of results. And I also wanted to share the first action with the board because these things will start coming out right away.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment? I
Sure.
think from the last strategic plan, the one thing that we were missing were greatness indicators, and this is just awesome to see already the work in progress on coming up with that. And Joe said, you know, people get to that point and they never take those greatness indicators and measure them, and now we're starting to do that, and I think that's fantastic.
Thanks. And the administrative team have been awesome about
Very,
looking
very
at what
good.
we've done, looking at our history, you know, making sure it's real about Warren. They're just not random. The numbers come from our kids and our staff and our culture. So they worked very hard at this document.
Okay. Thank you. That was very, very good. We're moving forward. So then we're going to need a motion to approve the strategic plan.
I move to approve the strategic plan 2015-2020.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Munda, second by Conway. Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs.
Yes.
Mr. Walls.
Yes.
Mr. Drake.
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I have 7 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. We're moving on to the 457B plan.
Currently, the district has what's called a 403B plan. It's very similar in the corporate world to a 401K plan. In the educational arena, we can also do what's called a 457B plan. This has a little bit different features, but is very similar. It's another vehicle for our staff to save on a pre-tax basis. And I've given you a comparison of plans. I've given you the resolution. This plan does not cost the district any money to implement. We just have to set up a couple more payroll deduction codes. But especially with the Tier 2 teachers, it is both good for the staff and good for the district to have staff that feels financially secure and may decide that they want to or are able to retire before age 67. So we're encouraging the board to adopt the resolution so we give another savings option to our staff. And we will be presenting this at the January 4th Institute Day, along with having vendors come out if the board does adopt the resolution. Any questions that I can answer for the board?
Is Edward Jones administering that?
No. Edward Jones gave me the comparison.
Okay.
We will probably have multiple vendors that will have different variations of a 457B plan. January 4th, we have 10 financial planners that have been recommended to us. And the staff is going to have an opportunity to talk to them. We will be talking to them about variations of 457 plans. We'll probably have multiple plans, just like we have multiple 403B plans.
Very good. Do you have no questions? No?
I had a question. Is there a reason in the resolution that we say the chief school business official rather than the, is it assistant or assistant superintendent for business? Is there a reason we're saying, not naming the person, I guess is what else? Is that so that when Carol, for example, should retire, that it's still known who that person is?
Yes, anybody, all schools have to have a chief school business official. Titles may change, but you're always going to have a chief school business official. My title officially is Assistant Superintendent for Business Services and Operations / Chief School Business Official. I have to use that designation. So this way, anybody that would follow in my position would have to be a chief school business official.
Okay.
So that's the
So
reason.
it doesn't necessarily mean that they would be the assistant superintendent for business operations?
Correct.
Correct. You could, when
Could
you,
it be like the treasurer, if we had a treasurer that's different from you?
if they were a chief school business official.
Okay.
So, my
Yeah,
title
that's
used to be
certification.
Director of
Right.
Finance, and I was the Chief School Business Official. So that's a consistent title.
Now, one of the things I read about the 457B is each plan has a different way of withdrawing, I guess, not with, I don't want to say withdrawing, I'm not sure what the word is I'm looking for. But when people can withdraw under certain circumstances from the plan, such as a financial disaster. I'm just using that as an example. Now, each plan will write its own conditions for withdrawal, correct?
We
Is
would,
that
we
what
would
I-
have a standard, all plans would have the same conditions for withdrawal.
So, one of the big distinctions with a 457B plan is that if you leave your employer and you take money out of the plan under certain circumstances, you do not pay a 10% penalty if you're not age 59 and a half. So for our younger employees that are portable, once they leave the district, they do have an opportunity to take money out of the plan without a 10% penalty, which is very advantageous to our younger staff.
Right.
So, and there are different hardship,
That's what I was trying to get
Yes.
at, the different hardship
That are-
varieties, which would those they vary from plan to plan. So would the staff, the teachers be able to, would we have multiple plans? As I understand it, I think we're gonna have multiple plans.
we're gonna continue to keep our 403B, which has multiple vendors,
Right.
same terms. We define hardship the same way. With the 457B plan, we would have multiple vendors, but hardship and withdrawal provisions are an IRS regulation, and the plan, whether it was offered by Edward Jones or someone else, would have the same provisions for hardship.
Okay. Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Carol.
Sure.
Then, we have no more questions, we need a motion.
I move to approve the resolution adopting 457B plan.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Drake, second by Munda. Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mrs. Bianchi?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I have 7 yes, motion carries.
Next item is summer school programming.
And Nate?
Hey, Nate.
I vote. Good evening, it's kind of appropriate, we're talking about summer school since the weather seems like summer, but it's still a long way away. I just wanted to point out a couple of highlights. All of you have a memo and also the packet in the board information tonight. But I just wanted to highlight a couple of things for you. Kind of the basics that summer school will again be at the Allman campus this year. June 6th through July 14th is the 6-week period during the summer in which summer school will run. January 11th, we will start the registration process, which is an online process for summer school. I'm going to be, once the packet is approved, I'm going to be emailing our feeder schools and giving them a copy of the packet so that if they have electronic communication, they can put it on their websites. I'm also going to be sending out information with an email to all of our parents, including the incoming ninth grade parents. That's going to include a copy of the packet as well as registration information. I also wanted to highlight, since we were talking about summer school, the 2 new workshops or kind of courses that we're going to be offering this summer. We were talking, I presented a little bit during the strategic plan where we were working with the lead teachers, and what we were able to come up with were 2 courses, one in math and one in science, where students who want to take the next level of AP or honors, one of which is math, would be pre-cal, an opportunity for them to be able to take a course in the summer that will help them be prepared for those courses, as well as the lead teachers in science. They noticed that students who were taking physics at any level were struggling with the math, so they'll also be doing a math course in the summer. Those were kind of the highlights that I wanted to share with you this summer. One other thing is that July 4th is on a Monday, so we're going to alter the schedule a little bit so that we go Tuesday through Friday. Normally we do Monday through Thursday. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Nate, how many students do you expect to participate in the summer school program? Do you have an idea?
It will be significantly less or fewer than we've had in the past. We had somewhere around, I think, 400 or so, 500 that we had this last year. It's not gonna be like it used to be. We were up around 1,500 at one point. So, it's gonna be significant.
That was due to the PE waiver.
Yeah,
Right.
so, yeah.
And a lot of those take help then. right?
Yes,
Yeah.
most of the incoming freshmen, or a lot of the incoming freshmen, the band parents and students will, they still do take help. So they're just not able to take the PE as well.
Yeah. If I recall, we talked about adding some classes that would not be remedial. And I noticed there was a college something here, I don't remember what it was. Oh, here's one, study skills. Do you have any other plans for adding classes that would help students meet part of a credit that could give them a step up, in school?
Well, that's the discussion, that's what we're gonna be continuing to look at. Part of our strategic plan was to evaluate each year, so that's definitely gonna be a question that we're going to address, so the answer to that would be yes, we will look at that, yes.
All right.
Thank you, Dave.
Then we need a motion to approve summer school.
I move to approve the 2016 summer school program.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Munda, second by Walls. Mrs. Conway.
Yes.
Mr. Drake.
Yes.
Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Piana.
Yes.
Mr. Walls.
Yes.
Mr. Munda.
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Resolution about approving an application to the Illinois State Board of Education for qualified school construction bond designation for obligations. Yeah, bad.
Recently, the Illinois State Board of Education released an application to allow districts to file an application for qualified school construction bond designation. I want to clarify for the board that this is not an application to issue debt. It is an application that is due January 16th. And if, in the future, the board does decide to issue debt for repair projects, for example, we could do that interest-free. If we don't file the application and you do later on down the road decide to get your projects done faster and issue some debt, it will be paying interest. The example we saw was a $5 million debt issue. There was $1 million interest cost. So, if we don't file the application, it's like not filing the lottery. You don't get a chance to win. So if we do file this application, the Illinois State Board of Education would review it. If we did get approval, then the board could later decide, they would have 18 months to decide whether to move forward with an interest-free loan. It just gives us flexibility. We may not have a chance of even being eligible, but I say if you don't try it,
Got nothing to lose.
you got nothing to lose. It doesn't cost us anything. All we have to do is have bond counsel sign off on our debt limitation and have the board approve the resolution, have the board president execute the
It's not a
application.
decision to spend money, it's just
No.
a decision to make an application to potentially spend money in the future interest-free.
Right, right. It does not obligate you to do anything. It just gives you a chance to get some interest-free debt if you choose to down the future. So,
Seems reasonable.
Do we have an assigned bond counselor from Chapman and Cutler?
yeah,
Or is it-
we use Larry White, and they will do that at no cost for us.
Okay,
I move to approve the resolution approving an application to the Illinois State Board of Education for qualified school construction bond designation for obligations to finance certain capital projects in and for Warren Township High School, District 121, Illinois, authorizing the President of the Board of Education of said school district to execute said application and directing an official of said school district to submit said application.
Well said.
Second.
Exactly what I would have said.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Motion by Conway, second by Drake. Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Okay, the next item is the payment of bills. So, I'll make the first motion I move to approve the payment of check number 329043 in the amount of $37,433.18 to the law firm of Hodges and Louisi.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Anderson, second by Walls. Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
No.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
No.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I have 5 yes and 2 no. Motion carries.
You know, can I make one comment? We've reviewed the bills every month, and several board members have come in over time and looked at the bills, and including our legal bills. They are obviously, no district, I don't think, likes spending money on legal bills because it's money that we're not spending on kids, but it's definitely a necessity. And Mr. Munda and we were reviewing some legal bills just on specific items that had come up for this board meeting. And several board members had asked, and so I talked to Mr. Anderson, I mentioned this maybe last month, that we can, right now we're in the RFQ process for architect services, but there's, it's been a long time since the board has reviewed legal services. It's not a bad idea, just out of standard practice every number of years to review our legal services. And so there's no reason that, obviously, if there's, we've got some dissension on votes and things of that nature, that it would probably be a good idea to do our due diligence and just bring in some legal firms and review what we have with Hodges Louisi and some other firms and see where they're at. So it was just a good conversation that I had with Mike about, there's no, on our end, we just want to make sure that we've got the best service for the district. And it's been a while, I believe, since the
Yes.
district has done this.
Yep, it's been at least 5 years, so I'm sure of that, so. Yeah, I think it's fine. As soon as we get done with this one, we can just start it on.
Oh, you mean after we've done FGM?
Right.
We will do, okay, thank you.
We'll do Hodges and Luigi.
We can't do them at a similar,
You want to kill Carol?
No.
oh, okay, I don't understand all of it that goes into it, obviously. So
No, we're
that's
gonna
why
do
I
one
was
at a time.
asking.
Yeah.
One at a time.
Okay, okay. I
Each
don't
one
want to have
is,
you have a heart attack, Carol.
Carol kept it fairly condensed. She did a nice job with the schedule for the architecture RFQ. It's fairly condensed.
Okay, I just didn't understand, that's why I was asking.
It's an interview process, so it's board time too, so we would do one right after the other.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Then, I move to approve the payment of bills for 12/15/2015, the amount of $4,565,296.89.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Anderson, second by Munda. Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I have 7 yes, motion carries.
Okay, next item is the approval of the hiring recommendations. And it's, I move to approve Exhibit A personnel recommendations 125 through 136 as posted. And item 137, Stephanie Helfand resignation. 138, Kathy Delzati, leave of absence. And Brian Hoppy, a new hire.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Anderson, second by Munda. Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi.
Yes.
Mr. Drake.
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Conway.
Yes.
Mr. Walls.
Yes.
Mr. Munda.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
I have 7 yes. Motion carries.
All right. Next item is the approval of regular meeting minutes for November 17th. Everybody was there, but Tom Drake.
So I'll move to approve the regular meeting minutes and executive session minutes of November 17th, 2015.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Munda, second by Conway. Mr. Drake.
I abstain, I was not at the meeting.
Mr. Walls.
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi.
No.
Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Conway.
Yes.
Mr. Munda.
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
I have 5 yes, 1 no, and 1 abstention. Motion
Very good.
carries.
Thank you. Item K is the first reading of the district board policies and procedures, which we've already gone over. We have one item under old business, which is the resolution authorizing the final aggregate tax levy.
Included in your board packet are all the resolutions and certificates, along with a history of extensions and our levy calculation page and our truth in taxation certificate and our certificate of tax levy. I just want to remind the board that we will only receive what's allowed by law, which is last year's extension plus an increase for CPI of 0.8%, plus a small amount for new construction. So even though the levy is higher, it's under 5% increase, so it will not, we did not require a public hearing this time, but, you know, we're really gonna get in the 0.8% to maybe 1.6% increase, realistically. We don't have final new construction in, but we are asking the board to approve the resolution for the final aggregate tax levy for 2015. Any questions?
Carol, do we ever have any tax objectors?
We have not had a tax objection formally filed for at least 10 years.
The reason I ask is, I don't know if you, well, I'm sure you are aware, but Stevenson had a tax objection. And apparently this organization files mass tax objections, and that's why I was curious about our school district.
Yes, there is an organization out there that routinely files tax exempt objections, but we have not had one for many, many, many years.
Okay, thank you.
Well, when it was like the tax year of 2000, like 5, 6, 7, they filed it all at once, and then,
That was probably the time
that was
we
in
had
about
it.
2008 or 9, and then they stopped.
Yes, I think it was even earlier than that, but please don't hold me to that date, but it's been a long time.
Okay. So then, I move to approve the resolution authorizing final aggregate tax levy for the year 2015, which includes the certificate of tax levy and separate resolutions for special education, leasing purposes, and CDAL IMRF by the Board of Education of Warren Township High School District 121, Lake County, State of Illinois. Roll call.
Motion by Anderson, second by Munda.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
Mrs. Biondi.
Yes.
Mrs. Conway.
Yes.
Mr. Walls.
Yes.
Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Drake.
Yes.
Mr. Munda.
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
I have 7 yes. Motion carries.
That is the final item on the agenda, so I move we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Anderson, second by Munda. Mr. Drake.
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi.
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.